Maybe we should start these meetings earlier so we can chit chat
That's
longer.
right.
That's one thing we miss with having in-person meetings is the schmoozing that goes on before the meetings and after meetings.
Right. We used to
still do
go
the after.
and I would talk to you, Roger, while you were setting up your equipment to
Oh, I miss
I
Rita
don't
and
miss
Vince
that
bringing
part.
the cookies in.
the
Oh,
cookies.
yeah.
That's right.
So when are we going to have in-person meetings? Has anybody talked about that?
I've got my yogurt ready. Well, I'm not ready for that anytime soon because this does save time.
Yep.
If we have to start going to in-person meetings, if we do it at Scioto Township Hall, I'm gonna learn how, or we have to have somebody run their Zoom hardware setup and multi-cameras and all that. And I don't want to go back to having to record with one or two cameras and edit it afterward.
Yeah.
We'll just say those were the good old days.
They were old days for sure, and long days. And this way, I think more people get to participate.
Definitely.
As long as they're on screen. One of the things I do miss about Zoom is a lot of people don't turn on their cameras, so you don't know if they're paying attention. Can't see their facial expressions, reactions. During the court hearings, when that was on Zoom, that was very informative to see the lawyers' faces when certain things happened. That was very enlightening and entertaining. Right, Brian?
So we have 30 or so participants.
I was going to say it's been so long I can't even recall what happened at that meeting, that hearing.
Why don't we go ahead and get started?
All right, I'll introduce myself and then introduce Beth to get going here. So I'm Roger Rail. I'm chair of CARD and chair of South Residents for Safe Water. I'm in my 29th year as a citizen. Paul Gelman, Danaher, 1,4-dioxane contamination. So I'm going to share my screen to bring up the agenda.
You're breaking up a little bit, Roger.
Yeah, well, I got a lot of things running here. Share my screen. Screen 1, screen 2. There we go.
While you're doing that, Roger, if anybody is not on the mailing list, but has joined a different method through the Zoom and would like to be on the mailing list, please put your email in the chat for me and I will be able to also mark you as being present. I have your name, so you will be marked, but if you want to start getting correspondence, put it in the chat for me privately if you want, and welcome.
Okay, Beth. Want to take over item 2?
Well, so that right into the approval of the February minutes. There has been no change since I sent them out to the board. This is a board vote. Do I have a motion to approve the February minutes?
So moved.
And supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Okay, good. The minutes are approved.
Okay, then Jack, you want to take over from 3 on?
Yes, thank you. First, I'd like to start out by recognizing Haley Brown from Representative Dingell's office. Welcome to the CARD meeting. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Haley Brown, and I am the Ypsilanti area and Western Wayne County field rep for Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. I'm sure you all are more likely to be familiar with my coworker, Katie. And she is kind of transitioning out of the office. She has a new position. And so I'm kind of covering different things for her. So I'm happy to be here. And that's pretty much it for me. So thank you.
Of course, of course. And before we dive into the agenda, I want to point out that we spent a fair amount of time at the last meeting discussing what to call the court's order. And so I went and I pulled up the June 1st, 2021 order, and the title of the order is the order to conduct responsive activities to implement and comply with the revised cleanup criteria. It makes no mention of the proposed consent judgment in the title, although it does adopt it within the text. So I think it's appropriate to call that order the June 1st, 2021 order of the court. Putting aside that now, let's dive into the old business that we have. Does Eagle have anything to report on either the confidentiality agreement or the update of the response for information from the polluter?
I have a little update.
Can I interrupt just a second?
Sure.
Jack, there's some new people on screen. Maybe you should introduce yourself first.
Oh, I'm Jack Eaton. I've been appointed by CARD's board as the executive director, and I conduct these meetings to try to keep us on our agenda and within our allotted time. And the way that you get recognized in one of these meetings is to use the Zoom hand raise feature. So if you have something, I will try to call on you in order. Is that what you wanted, Dan? I mean, Roger? Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, my name is Dan Hamel. For those that don't know me, I'm the Project Eagle project manager for the Gelman site. So I'm the day-to-day contact, day-to-day project manager. So if you have questions, you can send those to me. And again, I'm with Eagle, the Jackson district office. My office is in Jackson. But as far as I wanted to also point out that you'll see me in response to your questions or concerns about what I keep calling the previously we called the consent judgment order. I'm referring it to now to the response activity order. So if you hear me say that, that's what it is. It's the June 1st order. So I'll be calling it the response activity order. As far as item A, removal of the confidentiality agreement, I do have an update. We sent out a request for information letter, as I pointed out the last meeting, went out in early December, and we got no response. So we've sent out a violation notice letter and request for information. And those letters, we've sent one to Gelman and to Donaher, and those letters went out on February 10th. I've sent those letters to be posted on our webpage, so I anticipate very soon, likely this week, to have those posted for those that want to see what the letter actually stated. So it was identified as a violation notice letter, and there was a time frame given for Gelman to respond. And so I will keep you updated on that part of that removal of the confidentiality agreement, that item in the agenda.
Any questions on this matter? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to item 3B. Is an update on the Ms4 violation and new work plan for the Allens Creek area. I believe that Beth distributed the letter from Eagle, or I mean the email from Eagle and the letter from the polluter regarding the Allen Creek drain. Did everybody receive that?
No. I didn't see it.
I sent it to CARD Core email list 2 days, 3 days ago. Yeah, that's the letter. Evan Pratt sent it to me,
Oh, okay.
and I think I titled it correspondence from Washtenaw County Water Resource Commissioner about the MS4.
So
I need to click, in my presentation, I'll clarify some things. So why don't you?
well, if you'd like to do that at this point, go ahead.
Well, yes, as far as item B there in the update, Gelman submitted to us, RRD, a revised work plan, and they submitted it directly to us as a GSI work plan. The work plan previously was submitted to Evan as an MS4 work plan. So this letter that you put up on the screen is the transmittal letter from Gelman, transmitting a copy of the new revised work plan. Again, it's sent to RRD, to Eagle, because it is they identified it as a GSI work plan now. And then this letter also from Gelman also identifies that informing on their interpretation that it is a GSI work plan that has been submitted. It is a GSI issue and not an MS4 issue, and that this work plan fulfills the request from Evan last year about wanting a revised work plan for the MS4. So this is just a transmittal letter to Evan as the Water Resources Commissioner on the revised work plan, which they are identifying as a GSI work plan for the Allen Drain. So we received that here in beginning of end of January, beginning of February. Since it is a formal submittal to us, I've started the process of having Eagle review it as a GSI work plan, and including review by our technical team for GSI, and that will come up. We will be discussing it in March here, and then we will have a formal response back to Gelman as a GSI work plan review response back to them sometime here in March, or probably in April is when that will occur. So also just a little bit, we also at the same time received a revised GSI work plan for the Western area, which they had submitted a Western area work plan last fall, and we reviewed it and gave them comments, and they have submitted a revised, from those comments, they've submitted a revised work plan back to us, received that in January, and that is also in review as a GSI work plan in Eagle. So again, we will review that and get a response back sometime here, probably in April.
Thank you, Dan. So for those of you who haven't received this letter, a copy of this letter, basically it says that the dioxin that's being found in the Allen Creek drain is not a separate violation, but it's by Part 201 and Part 31 is just incorporated in the requirements that Gelman addressed their dioxin problem. So there's not a separate violation here. I will be interested to see what the state's response to that is. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. I did receive that letter. I didn't understand the description of it as it came on. And in fact, maybe I misunderstood the position of where the state is now. Has the state and or our Attorney General agreed with this position that there's no MS4 violation?
Let me chime in. I'll first state that the letter does accurately describe the three lawyers' agreement of the interaction between Part 201 and Part 31 here. Notwithstanding that, though, it doesn't preclude the ability of the parties to also demonstrate compliance with w.r.t's Water Resources Division's MS4 guidance. And that's, where we are right now.
Is that to say that our Attorney General has approved the notion or agrees with the notion that there would be no MS4 violation if the state law is satisfied?
I wouldn't say our Attorney General. I'm not sure she's aware of this situation. Actually, I think it's pretty unlikely that she is aware of it. But I'm not the only Attorney General that has reviewed that's, the interaction. And as of this point, there's, this consensus is for real.
Wouldn't one think this seems like a rather significant legal position? Wouldn't you think it appropriate to brief the Attorney General and get her specific response on this?
My superiors haven't seen that as a need at this point, at least.
Oh, maybe we should ask her to do that.
It's an election year. It might be a good point to bring up. May I move on, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, lower your hand. Kathy?
I have a question for Dan, and I'm just wondering, in terms of the Eagle's review of this correspondence from Gelman, will Christine Elwin be involved in this review? She's the director of the MS4 permit division.
Yes, we are working with Christy. I've already discussed. She has this letter. She has the new revised work plan, and as you know, I worked with Christy with the first work plan, which was identified as an MS4 work plan. So she is aware of this. We will be talking with them. We will be interdivision talking and working out again the Part 201, Part 31 implementation of GSI venting to a MS4 sewer. So yes, we're working with her, with that group, not only her, but her supervisor currently.
Oh, okay, great. And I just want to thank Eagle on behalf of the City of Ann Arbor, because one of the Eagle employees has joined the city's Environmental Commission. So thank you for that contribution.
Okay, Kathy, put your hand down. Go ahead, Vince.
I just want to relate information that was happened at the Environmental Commission meeting in late January 2022, where Evan Pratt presented his position on the MS4 violation. It was a little bit concerning that he made a comment that he didn't feel like that this contamination was hurting anyone, quote unquote. And I think that that's unfortunate. I think that we've had 49 part per billion in West Park in recent time. And I think that that's a concern that a lot of the neighbors have in the downstream areas. A lot of these tests that we've seen done are west of 7th Street, which is a much higher location on the watershed. So we need to do more testing to the east of 7th Street. And unfortunately, Evan Pratt and some others have done a lot of their testing in a location that we know is non-detect. And I'm not sure why we keep going back over there and wasting our money doing that. All right, thanks.
Well, I think more importantly, this letter identifies the acceptable level of GSI as being 280 parts per billion. And so, the double-digit test results certainly wouldn't cause anybody alarm if they believe 280 parts per billion is an appropriate level.
Well, that's a debatable issue what the safe number is for vapor intrusion into a house. We'll discuss that later in the meeting, I think.
Yeah. Go ahead, Beth.
Yes, thank you. Will there be testing then at the outflow of the drain into the Huron River, like immediately, and daily testing like they do at the outflow into Honey Creek?
Well, the work plan does identify that there will be testing, there will be taking samples, the first steps of the work plan. There will be taking samples in the Allen Creek drain, and samples at the outfall. So that is part of the initial investigation activities identified in this new work plan. So yes, they'll be doing that. I do want to point out that I've sent this work plan, the new work plan, to be posted on our webpage. Again, I expect it to be posted this week. I will check on that. So that should be available for viewing by anybody sometime soon.
Okay, go ahead, Rita.
Actually, that was my question, was when we would be able to see the work plan. And I feel that there is some discussion required about which is the acceptable level. I don't feel as though it's been made clear, given the back and forth on this. And I hope that we come to make that clear, because my understanding was that the level of the groundwater should be 0 parts per billion. So that's quite a discrepancy. Thanks.
Okay. So I want to thank Brian and Dan for the information on this point, and point out that it's not their fault that these numbers are being used. We need to have better legislation. Our state protection isn't very good. It's the reason some of us support the EPA. Moving on to 3C. Patty, do you have any update on the Ann Arbor wet basement testing?
We have had no new basement testing since the last meeting.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to D, do you have anything to report about the Sentinel well program?
I don't. I haven't been very productive the last month with regard to this, but I do owe a few things. So I have a call later today with Brian Steiglitz, and we're going to work through rolling out how we're going to introduce the Sentinel well program. So probably more next month.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Is there an update on the intervenor? I mean, on the appeal from the June order from anyone here?
I can give a brief update. Nothing has changed. We're still awaiting an oral argument date from the Court of Appeals, as far as I know.
Thank you. I just noticed that I skipped the Superfund designation update. If the Dingell representative has any information, if not, we can accept that.
I do not have any information.
Okay. And I apologize to everyone for skipping that.
Also, Diane Russell is on the screen and just turned on her camera, so she could.
So I want to welcome Diane and welcome her to make any comments that she feels is appropriate at this time to update us on what the EPA is doing.
Hi, everybody. Diane Russell here with Region 5 EPA community engagement. I've attended a few of your meetings to date, and just wanted to pass along. I had gotten, Roger, you had reached out to me yesterday, and as part of that correspondence, I figured I'd stop in today to just give you what we have on our website still is the status of what we're working on from the site assessment team. They're still working on sampling plan locations and still planning to sample in mid-May. As far as the sharing of that work plan, it's policy in the site assessment program that they are only they only share locations when obtaining access from property owners. They purposely kind of, as under the hazardous ranking scoring, that process is really only limited to key sampling to score a site. It's not the remedial investigation and to delineate any kind of cleanup. So there's a distinction there, probably around some of the work that you all are very focused on with what the state is doing and making sure areas of contamination are identified to be focused on for cleanup. And our case is a little bit different. It's just it's limited sampling for hazardous rank scoring. And then once a site's listed, that's when we would do more robust sampling around delineation and contamination extent. Sounded like somebody had a question.
Is your hand up, Roger? Okay, I don't see any questions. We understood when the EPA came in that this will be a slow process, you know, ramping it up. So you should always feel free to join us in these meetings, and it's okay to tell us that you have nothing new to report. So thanks again.
Well, and I just wanted to make sure I shared, I just wanted to stop in today to share that clarification that the site team made for me, which I think is a good one. I work across Superfund sites in Michigan. And, you know, at that point and stage of the game, we are spending a lot of time, you know, during the remedial investigation, trying to figure out where this contamination is. And, you know, the NPL listing process is really a different animal, especially one that I'm used to as well. So, you know, they're very specific and formulaic in how they apply this type of sampling. And it's important to note that as we go through the beginning stages of this process, just to remember what the purpose of that is. Having said that, Roger, I think if there's anything that you wanted to share, I think we've always welcomed, if you had information that you wanted to share with the team, I can facilitate getting that to them. So please feel free to do that. I will again put my email in the chat for anyone who wanted to share that, and I can always pass anything along.
So thank you so much.
I just had one question real quick. Is there any, thank you. Is there any idea when this may go to a listing process for Superfund?
Well, I mean, they have to, the first things first, they have to do that sampling that they have planned for mid-May. And then what the internal steps are from there, I'm not sure, other than what they have definitely communicated to you all, that it can take a while to complete that assessment.
How long is a while?
Through that process. What's that? I know you want to, what does a while mean?
How long is a while?
They've, so I believe, and I wasn't at those meetings where we had our staff from Superfund. I don't know if they talked specifically about the site assessment process alone, but definitely they said it could take a couple years.
Okay, thanks.
For this first part to even get it listed. And then even beyond that, you know, cleanups can take, even once you have the Superfund designation, the remedial investigation, you know, all these things could take several years to have play out before actual cleanup actions are taken.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Go ahead, Roger.
Thanks, Diane, for coming to the meeting and clarifying that. What I was concerned about was that I want to make sure that the new consultant has access to all of the data that we have, including the data from the preliminary analysis done, different information that is not in the current database. And I want to make sure that the history of the site is represented during their investigation of where is the dioxin, where is it going, where has it been, and you know, I just wanted to make sure of that. And I can work with you offline to make sure that EPA has all of those sets of data that CARD and SRSW has accumulated over the years. Thank you.
So I just want to make sure, is this something that you've already shared with Eagle, or the Eagle has access to? Because I know the team is working closely with the relevant Eagle and you know, Eagle contacts and things like that. So is that something that's outside of what Eagle has access to?
Apparently,
Okay, yeah, well, just give me the
I'm not sure.
the information that you want us to kind of make sure we have in our repertoire, and I'll make sure I get to the site assessment team, okay?
Thank you.
Again, thank you. So now I'm going to return to F. Kathy Knoll said that she had no further update. Perhaps Brian Nagel can tell us if he has any further information on the appeals, either to the Court of Appeals or to the Supreme Court.
No, I don't. We're just really waiting. You know, the only thing that I've sort of heard from, you know, appellate lawyers is that the Court of Appeals usually likes to hold the hearings within a year of when the case was originally filed, the appeal was filed. So that might be May.
Okay. So are the various briefs that have been filed in the appeals available publicly anywhere? Did Brian freeze?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I can't answer that off the top of my head. It is in the sense that I don't know the ability of like citizens to access the My File system, but yeah, certainly, you know, each team of lawyers has their own copy. I don't know if anybody's posted them anywhere or not. I can't say that off the top of my head. There's a lot of them.
Yep. Go ahead, Ralph.
I guess my question would be, why wouldn't it be appropriate for Eagle as representing the interests of citizens to post them somewhere? I mean, you are ultimately the public's representatives, and why wouldn't the public have a right to know what the hell's in the briefs that you're filing?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead and put your hand down, Ralph.
Yes.
I'm going to move on to G.
Well, I'll answer. I'll look into that question
Thank you.
and see if that is we can post it on the webpage. So
Excellent. I appreciate that very much. Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm just going to send an email to our council requesting that they send me copies of all that. I can share it with the folks. I thought I already had, and I went looking for it. I can't find it.
Sue.
Thank you. Sue Shing from Washtenaw County. We haven't had a good check-in in closed session with our lawyer in a little while, and we'll be having one soon. And I will also ask him about making as much possible public. We've had that conversation before, but it bears another one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Now I'm going to, go ahead, James.
Just to verify, so are these motions privileged? If they're deemed public information, I'm just curious as to why they aren't. Is this a general practice? I guess I'm just curious as to why that is, given what Ralph mentioned a moment ago.
Well, if you went down to the Court of Appeals, you could ask for copies and they'd probably charge you, 10 cents a page or something. But our lawyers have all this, and we just want it hosted somewhere where anybody who has any curiosity can go look at it. Dan Hamel from Eagle has offered to do the legwork to make it publicly available without all of that cost. So
that would be nice. I think it would be a good gesture.
Well, I'll check into it. I want to manage expectations. I will go to my management and just say what questions and requests have been made. So we'll see. I know we have posted some other legal documents, including the CJ order, but haven't done a lot of appeals and those types of things. So
okay,
I guess to say if they aren't privileged, I can't see why there wouldn't be a problem. So
they're not. It's just what level of bother you have to go through. Go ahead, Roger.
I'll just remind everyone, as I was one of the parties in the contested case that kept Gelman from dumping 60 to 100 parts per billion into the creek, partially treated purge water. And I don't even have all of the information that was presented during those hearings, those contested court hearings. So, you know, this is a pattern that is not new. It's been happening all along. You know, some of the information that was, so it's, you know, there's a lot of information. So careful what you ask for, because somebody has to organize it.
Yep.
So, but it's also important that all the decision makers have access to that information.
Indeed. Thank you, Roger. Now I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda. The Scioto contaminated homeowner wells. Kathy, do you have anything on this?
Yes, I can add a few things. We had a town hall on February 17th to educate residents and other interested parties on the recent well testing and the plans for future well testing. We had a panel discussion, Washtenaw County Health Department, EGLE, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and Keith Gadway from Quantum Environmental all attended and answered questions. Residents, and thank you to all of you who participated on the panel. Residents submitted questions in advance and during the 2-hour town hall. So we moderated questions. We tried to moderate questions. Several of them were left unanswered. We are going to be compiling a record of all questions that were asked and the answers from the panel members. This hasn't even been started yet. All unanswered questions are going to be sent out to the appropriate panel members, probably within the next couple weeks. We had approximately 125 participants throughout the meeting. Sometimes it was as high as 150. We've had a lot of resident feedback. The town hall was well received. There were some questions that came up during and after the town hall. And there are a couple in particular that I wanted to raise today for discussion with EGLE. One question pertained to a map showing a volume decrease in what is thought to be the plume. And I think that I'll let someone else respond to that and discuss it in more detail. And another series of questions related to a comment made by Keith Gadway, the consultant for Scioto Township from Quantum Environmental. And his comment pertained to the fact that sometimes when there's well testing at one residence, that you don't need to have well testing at the next door residence. So we are in the process of clarifying that comment a little more. And I don't have any answers from Keith today, but maybe someone else here who has scientific knowledge would want to comment on that. But we'll be in the process of clarifying that issue. So I'm going to stop there, and I've offered two questions that can lead to discussion here today. And thank you to everyone who participated.
So before I call on Beth, I want to note that I have put a link to the YouTube video of the town hall meeting in the chat. If you want to
Great.
click on that, it'll pull up in YouTube. Go ahead, Beth.
Yes, thank you, Kathy, and everyone that was there at the meeting. I did not ask any questions, but I listened to the entirety. Since I don't live in SIO, I didn't want to interrupt. But when the geologist showed that plume map of all the purples, the rockworks, and he was first off, let me back up. The question from the public was, is there modeling to show future potential pathway of this dioxide? Kind of like what Patty's done in those Sentinel wells north of town that are going to go in. And his answer was this, he showed that interactive, the highest concentrations that have gone down. So it's something I've never seen before at CARD or anywhere. It was very confusing. It made the illusion that the plume is shrinking, and it's not. I'd love to hear Eagle's take on that too. But then the other thing about the wells that you mentioned about Keith Gadway saying, that's perked my ears up, because here in Westover Hills, my well was at a non-detect and the house right behind me was 1,800 parts per billion. And so we're all at different aquifer levels from what I understand. So I actually thank you for bringing these up. I was concerned about both of those answers.
Okay, thank you. So on the agenda, it asks for EPA's response to these new events. Either Haley or Diane could offer anything if there is anything to offer.
Well, could we back up, Roger, to does Eagle want to respond to that plume map that the geologist showed? And I'm hoping he'll never show that again unless it's in the proper context. These are new uninformed residents too that might have thought, oh, the plume's shrinking. Like, I don't.
Well, what that plume map that he showed was a generation of the historic concentrations from monitoring wells, and what he was showing is the highest concentration areas are going to a lower concentration. So he wasn't trying to say that the extent of contamination is shrinking. What he was trying to say is that the source of contamination for plume migration, the highest concentrations areas, the hotspots, we have information, historic sampling information that shows those are going down, and that's what he was trying to present. The map, the model that we have is a static model, meaning it's not a predictive model. It doesn't predict, other than visually where you can see different concentrations going down, new concentrations appearing. It's a static model. So what we do is we update the information in this model yearly at a minimum, yearly, with all the yearly samples from monitoring wells, residential wells, everything that we utilize is updated once a year, and then put into the Rockworks model. And then that information is put into our GIS, our interactive web map.
I understand all that, Dan, but that it was irrelevant to this meeting. This meeting was about these fingers, the expansion of the plume into homeowner wells. And it was like way
I don't
off.
remember, truthfully, Beth, I don't remember what generated that. I believe it was generated from a question. The map was brought up on a question, and so I can't answer to the, okay, why, it wasn't a part of our initial presentation. So, but that's what it is. I wanted to clarify that we have the information that shows in the high concentration areas that those are going down. And the idea was to present that a continuing source, the source of contamination, when concentrations go down, that continuing source, goes down, the movement goes down. But again, it wasn't trying to say that the overall extent of a detection contamination, a detection in groundwater. We weren't trying to say that that was reducing or not expanding at low concentrations.
Okay. Go ahead, Ralph.
I have from someone who knows less about the science of this than probably anybody at this screen. My normal layperson take on that would be, oh, great. The big concentrations in the origin are spreading out. Wouldn't that be almost the immediate logical response? If the concentrations at the source are going down, that's exactly why all that stuff is now spreading into your yard.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that the obvious, rational?
No, the obvious, well, we also pointed out, we will point out is that there's been remediation, pumping, treating since the mid 1990s. And that is the reason why that the concentration in these hotspots are going down. So Roger, that's our interpretation. That's what we were trying to state, or we will state that, is that the ongoing remediation activities that have been required from Gelman has reduced the high concentration areas, and will continue to do so in the future as the response activity order requires Gelman to continue those pump and treat activities and add additional pump and treat activities at locations of other locations of high concentration.
But both could be true, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Both the removal of pollution and its spread, because we know it's spreading, can be responsible for the reduced levels of contamination at the peak areas of the plume. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I can't say that I have information that says that's not true. What you're saying is that you're identifying your interpretation. You're identifying that it's spreading out, so it's the concentrations are going down because it's diluting as it spreads out.
Okay, go ahead, Roger.
So it's not both. It's actually four things involved. One is that, yes, they're removing a certain amount of dioxin. Two, the dioxin that isn't removed is spreading. So the high concentrations go down, leading to higher concentrations at some lower level in the surrounding, wherever that dioxin is going.
Did Roger freeze?
Roger.
I had to pause there for a second because I saw my screen lock up.
Oh.
And that'll happen again because I'm running like, I don't know how many windows here. So three, we don't know where all the dioxin is. So we don't know where some of the high concentrations are, and where, because high concentrations are showing up around places where we didn't expect it, because we didn't have enough sampling to show that there were high concentrations spreading there. The fourth thing is there's some natural attenuation going on in certain places of the plume. And we don't know the degree of that natural attenuation. There's also something called redispersion from low permeable areas where there's been high concentrations get into some clay layers and soil layers. And as the higher flow areas go by that area, they're pulling some of that dioxin that's stored in those low permeable areas back and continuing the dioxin levels in certain areas. So there's really like five things going on. It's not as simple as just seeing a go down in one area and say, oh, we're doing a great job. No, because we don't know enough about where all the dioxin is. So that's about all I have to say on that. Thanks.
Okay, there's a note in the chat that
I'll say something later, by the way.
Yeah, there's a note in the chat that perhaps we want to invite Dr. Chris, I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Swoboda.
Thank you. To a future meeting so he can have this discussion with us. Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, I think that's a good idea, Jack. And I wanted to ask if there's anyone else from Eagle who's present today who can shed any more light on this issue. But I really appreciated Roger's analysis.
So go ahead.
Yes, I'm having some problems with my computer, so I don't really know if you can actually hear me or not. But yes, I'm also like coming from Eagle, and I think that Dan was making a good point explaining what exactly the maps we're trying to represent. I mean, we don't have a predictive model. It's all based on historical information, and this is what the information is showing. Potentially, like it be like I think that Roger was presenting some options. I mean, we will need like additional information to make like a full statement about what exactly is the reason, but we don't have more input of dioxin. We have like now treatment, we have a lot of monitoring. I think that this is what information has been saying, and this is what Dr. Swoboda put together. So basically a snapshot of the concentration through time.
Yep, thank you. Go ahead, Vince.
Thanks. I think, we need to make it clear that we don't really know how much 1,4-dioxane was dumped into our groundwater. It's changed dramatically over the years. We've taken out much more than they said they actually used originally. And the other issue is we have not been doing testing like the bedrock. Like CARD has been asking for years, we need to do these tests to bedrock because we need to know what those concentrations are down near the bedrock location. And it just hasn't been done, and it's really inexcusable. And we need to start doing that to get a better.
I'd like to comment on that. The response activity order that Gelman is implementing right now, that Eagle is overseeing, is sampling to bedrock on the majority of the monitoring wells, vertically profiling, meaning drilling to bedrock to get geologic samples of the material that the groundwater is in, and also doing analytical tests every 10 feet as they encounter water down to bedrock. So we are doing that as part of this response activity order. We then, Eagle is involved, talks with Gelman when a monitoring wells at a particular location are ready to be installed. We have a say in where those wells should be installed, the vertical interval. And so far, wells at a specific locations, there's been 1 to 3 monitoring wells installed at each one of these new response activity order monitoring well locations. So we are doing sampling to bedrock. I want to confirm that.
I thought you had said in the previous meeting that you weren't able to get them to go to bedrock. So I appreciate.
No, what I said the previous meeting, there are specific monitoring well locations under the order that are not required to go to bedrock. They're basically replacement. They're going to a mid-level, so they only drill to mid-level, and that's actually spelled out in the response activity order.
Oh, that should change.
All right, put your hand down and go ahead, Roger.
I just want to clarify something that Vince said, that Gelman they haven't taken out more dioxane than they used. They've only taken out more dioxane than they estimated was in the groundwater twice. They originally estimated 64,000 pounds groundwater, then they upped that to 80,000 pounds. And they've already removed more than 115,000 pounds of dioxane. The other thing about that is that Keith Gadway in that Scioto town hall said there were 800,000 pounds of dioxane used. That's the old estimate. The newer estimate from Gelman, environmental coordinator, their hydrogeologist, and Sybil Cullen, who was at DEQ at the time, published a paper that said, no, it was actually 850,000 pounds. So there's 50,000 pound difference. I think that's significant. 50,000 pounds of dioxane is significant. If you work that out, if you dump that into Barton Pond, that would be a pretty big high concentration. So I'd like to have people who are weighing in on this have the most accurate and up-to-date facts when they speak. And that includes all of us. And, you know, maybe I just spoke just now, but somebody needs to pay attention. And, you know, when somebody uses the wrong figures, call them out on it, because it's important. We can't just be, you know, one of the Eagle people recently told me in the last couple of years, well, it's good enough for government work. And for a site like this, that's not acceptable. And I appreciate Dan Hamel saying that, you know, we're doing a better job, that Eagle's doing a better job now, that we don't lose that. You know, let's do the best we can with what we got. We gotta have due diligence to match the scale of the problem, because this is the largest 1,4-dioxane contamination of its type in the country, if not the world. And we need to have due diligence to match that scale of the problem. So that's all I have to say at this point. Thanks.
Thank you. Rita.
Thank you. A couple of things. One is that I just want to agree with what Kathy said, that the you know, the impression that Sabota gave in that meeting, I interpreted what he was saying as meaning that the plume is getting smaller. So Dan, I really appreciate your clarification. I think the way you said it makes a lot more sense, and I don't feel like that is what came through at that meeting. The second thing I wanted to bring up is these different mechanisms that are proposed to explain the decreasing concentrations of 1,4-dioxane. They're all possible, but there's a recent paper by Jackson, who was, I guess, a student of Lemke's with Lemke, and put forward these 5 hypotheses and some arguments for and against some of them. And the bottom line is the data are very scant, and the assumptions they're based on are based on very, very thin amounts of data. And they agree with that, they concluded, but yet they come to certain conclusions. And I would really caution against jumping too quickly on the explanation, which I think that Jackson and Lemke put forward, that bioremediation is the big one. They have 0 data in that paper, yet that's the conclusion they draw. So I'm just putting forward that people should be cautious, should understand there are these potential mechanisms that can explain why the concentrations are going down in certain monitoring wells, but they're really based on too little information. So thank you.
Thank you. A good point there. So then now I'm going to move on to the next item, which asks for the EPA response to these new events. Either Haley or Diane can speak on this if they have anything to say.
I don't have a response at the moment, but I am taking notes. So thank you for all of this discussion, and I'm learning a lot. So thank you, everyone.
And you should feel free to reach out to CARD members if there's any gaps in your understanding of what we talked about this morning.
Wonderful, thank you.
This is Diane. I just wanted to note that we did attend, sorry, my cat wants to go to the meeting. I did attend the Scioto Township Town Hall, and I'm trying to remember, I provided an update. Someone had asked a question about the status of EPA's work, and I provided an update and a link to our website for updates. That was the just the extent of my participation in that.
Okay, thank you. So underlined here for extra emphasis is the idea that Eagle should be using the 522 method. I was really pleased to see that both Scioto Township and the county are using the 522 method for this well water testing. And is Josh here to discuss why the state hasn't adopted 522?
No, he's not here today. He had to go in front of the legislators to a meeting. So I mean, I can speak on that. We haven't adopted that method 522, like I said, in the town hall meeting, because you know, the method that we are utilizing allows evaluation for risk related to Michigan cleanup criteria. I do want to point out that, as I said in that town hall meeting, that we have been working with the lab, and the lab has been working, that the method they are going to start identifying a lower detection limit on the method they are using. The method they use is called 8260 SIM, SIM, and single ion monitoring basically is the SIM, and is going to be reduced from 1 part per billion down to 0.5 part per billion. So they will be presenting any samples submitted to the drinking water lab. Residential well samples will have it now have a detection level of 0.5 part per billion. We will be utilizing that same the drinking water lab, the county and Eagle, in this 2022 sampling activities on residential wells that we complete. That's going to start here in April. We're going to be sampling approximately 187 residential wells around the Plume area. Several of those, a group of those will be sampled twice a year for a total analysis of approximately 215 plus or minus sample analyses for 1,4-dioxane. We will, you know, those detections will be at 0.5 parts per billion. So as far as why we haven't moved to that method is the laboratory is not does not have that capability to use the method 522. Again, they have the capability to answer all the questions required for under Michigan to evaluate for related to the evaluation of risk related to the drinking water criteria of 7.2. The other one of the other reasons so far, you know, is that we haven't utilized that is just realize that the methodology is a little bit different. As far as sample collection, sample bottle requirements. And in reality, although there has been some discussion by I think Dan Bicknell and others that the cost is lower to use method 522, it is not lower. When you evaluate what has to be done, the whole process, including setting it up, the bottles required, taking those out, the time required to fill the bottles, that type of thing. When you do all that together, you know, we're coming up with numbers that our current lab, you know, is using a cost estimate of, you know, approximately $160, $161 per sample. With everything that's the collect, you know, that we're paying the county to collect the shipping and then the actual analysis, the cost of the analysis. And when you go into an external lab, if that's what has been suggested for Eagle, when you take all those same considerations going to an external lab, it's coming up to about our calculations coming up as about $243 per sample to do all that. The other one of the reasons that it's higher is, you know, we pay the county to do this. They are maxed out at the current levels, numbers of samples. So we would have to use a subcontractor to go collect this, collect the more samples, you know, these samples. If you use a subcontractor, that increases that up. And that's why we have a 200, you know, we came up with a $243 per sample. So it's not, you know, we currently don't have the capability at the lab to do method 522, but we have the capability to do analyze to a concentration to evaluate using Michigan drinking water criteria. And we are going to be offering something lower to the 0.5. I believe the Scioto Township detection limit for their method 522 using Pace Lab was 0.12 was their detection limit.
It was.
Okay, we're going to be going to 0.5. So there is still a little difference, but again, it's relating to evaluating to a 7.2 criteria, and which is what we have to do as a state. That's the numbers. Then our method fulfills that requirement. So that's where we stand right now.
I wanted to make a clarification comment. The 522 method was used by Scioto Township and will be used in the next 2 rounds of sampling, but it's also used by the City of Ann Arbor. The comment was it was used by the county, but I don't think the county has done that. I think it's just the City of Ann Arbor.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's why Kristen has her hand up, is to clarify my misstatement. But go ahead, Kristen.
Yep, that was it. Thanks, Mac. I just wanted to clarify that the county partners with the state, and so we will be testing at that 0.5 part per billion limit, but we do not use the EPA method 522 again because of the contract with the state. Thank you.
So I wanted to circle back around to what Dan said. So if I understand what you said, Dan, what you're saying is that although the testing of under the 522 method is cheaper, because it's more sensitive and there's a greater likelihood of contamination during collection, the collection process is actually more expensive.
Well, not really what you stated. The collection process, the overall process to collect a sample is more because of bottle requirements, for sampling. For example, sampling for the EGLE lab, we take 2 40 ml glass VOA vials, which you can hold in one hand. Mm-hmm. The sampling bottle requirements for using method 522 are 2 amber glass, brown glass, 500 milliliter bottles. That's what they have to receive at the lab to run that method. Or 1 liter glass amber. So when you take that into account, you have to have many more coolers to hold those samples to get them out to the sampling locations. And then once you fill those up, you have much more cost in shipping and just handling the time and the people needed to do that because they weigh so much more. Where the county can get away with taking 30 samples in a large cooler of the 40 ml VOA vials, you'd need probably 5 plus or minus coolers to ship for the 522. So those are all the I wanted to make sure that is one portion of why the overall sample, at least our calculation, the overall cost of a sample is higher using method 522.
Okay, thank you. Michael. You're mute.
Perhaps the confusion on what the county did came from the fact that Ann Arbor Township also used 522. So that was another jurisdiction that did.
No, I think it's just because I'm not very careful on what I say. But go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I was just going to point that out too. Ann Arbor Township used 522. The City of Ann Arbor uses 522. Scioto Township uses 522. The county, in contract with EGLE, uses an older method, and Gelman itself uses another older method. Both those 2 older methods can only detect onto 1 part per billion. Now, there's places where 1 part per billion is appropriate because you don't need to, if you know that dioxin is there, you don't need to look below 1 part per billion. But there's areas around the edge of the plume that the townships are doing and the city is doing that you really want to know a heads up before it gets to 1 part per billion. So you can find these narrow pathways of concentrations that are making its way out to the hinterland. EGLE's Gelman database does not include a field for what analysis method is used. It might be put in the note field, but that appropriately should be done in a separate field, as what happened when the early sampling was done by the Michigan Department of Health, had a separate field for that. But when they got absorbed into into DEQ, those kind of details were lost. And we need, in the next iteration, when there's a proper database, complete database with all these kind of fields added back in, maybe when the EPA comes in, that kind of detail is going to become important. Like, let's show me all the 522 samples. You can't do that right now, even if the 522 samples were in the Gelman database. There's no selection method to do that right now. So I just want to point that out for everyone.
Roger, I want to also clarify something. As I stated, you said that the Eagle Lab is 1 part per billion. Well, we're saying that it's now being going to be 0.5 part per billion on future sampling. So I want to make that clear to everybody that the lab has done a lot of work to get the method they are currently using, which I think is at least an interim, a very good option that we're offering in the interim as these questions come up about the testing and the requirements. But realize, under the Michigan environmental law, the lab is doing the lab method is what is, it does reach the detection limit that's required for evaluation. That's all. I just want to make sure we're going to be doing 0.5 from now on. So
thanks for
clarifying. And I'll keep you posted.
Clarifying that, but again, even as these new samples come in under 1 part per billion from the Eagle, you won't be able to select unless you happen to know that maybe select by date, say everything after 1 part per billion.
Well, one thing you will be able to select, Roger, under our database, the detection limit is identified. So you can, from now on, there'll be, the detection level on an analysis method. It won't have the method name, 522 or 8260 sim, but it will have a detection level. So that from now on our database, you'll see a 0.5 as I think it's identified as a reporting limit. What's the lowest they can get. So that is one way to evaluate the field.
Thank you.
So
thank you. Okay. Go ahead and put your hand down, Roger. And I'm going to move on to the next item, 3H, the Knights of Columbus development. Do you have anything new on that, Kathy?
There's nothing new on it. For people who aren't aware of the issues with this, the developer is proposing a community water well. And this location of this development proposal is very close to sites that have tested positive for dioxane. So it's going to be a very controversial issue. There's nothing new. It's still at the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead, James.
And just a quick question for Kathy, and it's not, date still has not been set for this project to come back. The township is still waiting further information from the developer, correct?
Correct.
All right,
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So then moving on to Eagle's update. Want to take this, Dan? You're mute.
Yep, I was muted. Under basically a progress report on the implementation of the response activity order, the court order, the June 1st court order. I've basically in the western area, which is west of Wagner Road, they have completed construction of monitoring wells as required at 6 locations, and those locations are identified in the CJ order, the figure that it is part of that order. The response activity order. So at those locations, MW 143, 142, 143, 144, 145, and 146, between 1 and 3 monitoring wells has already been installed at each one of those locations. All the locations, like I said, are sampled to bedrock, except There are 2 in that area that were specifically in the response activity order that did not have to go to bedrock. They were just replacement wells because there's monitoring wells near them. We wanted to, it was negotiated, and only one replacement or interval monitoring was identified. So they went to that depth and profiled down to that specific depth. Access negotiations are proceeding. There are 2 other locations in the western area off of Jackson, location I and J, as if someone would look at the response activity order map that's included. They are in negotiations with those property owners to install monitoring wells at those locations. The negotiations are the particular property owners they have certain concerns, and so they're working through those concerns right now. As soon as those access is granted, then those wells will be installed. And I believe one of those locations will be a 1 monitoring well location, and the other one will go to bedrock and be vertically profiled. As far as on the eastern area, as far as monitoring wells, there's been a monitoring well cluster that has been installed down near the Lakeview, South Wagner Road, Lakeview Avenue, Lakeview Road residential wells. There's been a monitoring well installed in there. And the next location that they're going to be drilling here, probably starting here in the next couple of weeks in March, is location E, which is adjacent to the existing Montgomery well, the city's Montgomery well. So there is a cluster well location down there, and that will go to bedrock and then also be vertically profiled, and then 1 to 3 monitoring wells likely. It'll probably be in the 2 to 3 likely be installed at that location based upon the geology and the vertically profiling. As far as the other monitoring well locations in the city, in the prohibition, the eastern area, is the Gelman is still in negotiations with the City of Ann Arbor. The rest of those locations are proposed to be installed on city right-of-way, city roadway, city right-of-way. So they are completing their negotiations with the city to get access under a overall access agreement for those installations. And that access agreement also includes infrastructure from extraction wells, the Rose Well / IW2 well area, which I mentioned earlier there. And so they need to bring piping in to get it into the system to be able to transport it back to the Gelman site across Wagner and treat it. So as soon as those locations, which include what is identified as location A, B, and C in the north, along the prohibition zone up in the north, and then locations H, G, and F, which is down near West Park area. As soon as those access is signed, or they get access, and they will start installation of those monitoring wells. As far as the extraction wells, they are going to be converting IW2, which is an existing well. It was historically an injection well. They'll be converting that to an extraction well. And then they have done some test borings along Valley Drive to evaluate putting in another extraction well, which has been identified as the Rose Well. And so that in the response activity order. So those activities have been done, and that will be done as soon as they get some, like I said, access to tie in the piping to transport the extracted contaminated groundwater. As far as the GSI, I talked about a little bit about GSI work plans that we received for both the eastern and western areas. They have implemented, even though they've submitted a revised work plan in the western area, I've given them permission to implement some sampling that's needed in the western area GSI evaluation, because they needed to do that here in the winter when it was salt, ice, more and less water, and it was ice, to get access into the unnamed tributary area to do what is identified in the work plan as pore water sampling. So they've done that. They did it in here in early February, and we were aware of that and discussed that with them, and I gave them permission to start that without a final approval of the whole work plan by EGLE. So we will be evaluating the remaining activities in the Western area work plan, and so work is in the Western area GSI evaluation has started. So and then as soon as we evaluate their Eastern area GSI work plan and give that approval, then they will start those activities, which I identified to Beth earlier, which initially will be some sampling of the Allen Drain waters and flow in the Allen Drain, and at the outfall where the Allen Drain goes into the Huron River.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Roger.
I just want to clarify one thing. Dan, you said that if there's a replacement well, you're not requiring vertical sampling. So is it possible that some of the contaminant, some of the layers where dioxin was found or not found during the original drilling of a well, is it possible that dioxin could have made its way to those other elevations in the time that between the original boring and when the replacement well was?
I guess I misspoke. I shouldn't have called them replacement wells. It is they mainly are single wells related to, there's other monitoring wells in the area except for a particular vertical zone. So that was negotiated as far as your question, in the response activity order, in response activity negotiations, and that was what is in the order. That's the proposed
okay, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
The fact that you're putting a well in where there was a previous well nearby.
And still is a previous well nearby.
Right, but of course the previous well nearby is only sampling where the screened elevation is. It's not going back and sampling all the other elevations that it bypassed during the original boring. So do you have any evidence of any layers of dioxin that made its way past a monitoring or purge well because the screened elevation was only in 1 or 2 or 3 locations?
No, Roger, I don't have any evidence unless I have vertically vertically profiling.
Right. And because you're not,
but again, the reason why these are
vertically
part of the order.
I know, but the science should be driving this, not somebody's negotiations. Science should
Roger, we have,
this.
and adjacent to these locations, we have new wells that are being vertically profiled to bedrock. Now, you kind of start getting into the, you kind of start getting into how many wells, how close do the wells have to be? This is what.
No, but what I'm asking for is why not vertical profile new wells when there is no recent vertical profiling?
I don't disagree with you, Roger. This is what was negotiated, and this is what's in the order. So this is what's being done first.
I know, but I just want people to ponder that for a minute. In other words, dioxin is moving through certain layers, and it could be moving past screened levels of monitoring and purge wells without us knowing it. We actually have an instance where TW14 and TW17 were drilled a couple years apart. And they're what, 50 or 60 feet apart? Is that close, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, within that, yeah, plus or minus.
Yeah, both of those were vertically profiled. And if you look at those vertical profiles, you will see differences in dioxin. So dioxin showed up 2 years later that wasn't in the original drilling of TW14. It showed up in TW17, 60 feet away. So we already know that this can happen. So why not vertical profile all new wells?
So Roger, if I may,
if it's within,
if I may, we have the problem of science versus lawyers. The EGLE can only require the polluter to do that which the lawyers have agreed to. And so it's kind of a science versus lawyers sort of thing. This is really unfortunate. I'm sure that EGLE would do more if there was more in the court's order. And I don't think it's really fair to call out EGLE for what's lacking in the agreement that the lawyers negotiated. So if we can. Go ahead, Mike.
My question, I think, was subsumed in all of that. I was just trying to understand whether the failure to drill some of these wells to bedrock and do vertical sampling is because of an interpretation of the response order, as opposed to some other basis.
Yeah, on the specific locations, some of the, like 2 of the locations, it's specifically written into the response order that it's going to this interval, and it doesn't require the other locations, you know, they're going to bedrock and vertically profile. So
okay, thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rita.
Thank you. So I was just reading that letter that Evan Pratt had sent out, and I think it's relevant to the current discussion because we're talking about activities that, for the monitoring wells based on the response order. And I want to bring to light a couple of excerpts and ask if I'm interpreting it right. It says on page 3,
what
the response, excuse me?
What letter, Rita? So
This is the letter from Zalzmer about
okay. So it's
the
Gelman's transmittal letter
MSW4.
to Evan.
Right,
Okay.
right. So it says the response activity order authorizes the discharge of the plume to the Huron River so long as Gelman ensures the discharge is in compliance with Part 201. Indeed, the entire Eastern Area Remediation Program required by the response activity order is premised on the eventual discharge of the plume to the Huron River. So that's sort of a shock to me. So the entire Eastern plume cleanup is premised on dilution as the solution to the pollution. And then in the 3rd bullet below that, it says, the potential discharge of the plume to the Huron River by the Allen Creek is authorized by the response activity order. And I find that sort of remarkable because the Allen Creek drain is been co-opted as a pollution conveyance. And I thought that this was fought in the city of Ann Arbor like decades ago. And so I guess from the city's point of view, I'm wondering what's going on. Is this allowed? And from the county's point of view, is this allowed that Gelman is now allowed to discharge into the storm sewer drain? We did fight this. I remember clearly that Pat was part of that fight. So I don't know, how did this happen? I guess I'm asking, and am I reading it right? So thank you.
I think it was when the court adopted the prohibition zone that this was all just simply kind of accepted, that the eventual destination of the plume was the river.
I understand the prohibition zone very well. Disagree with it, understand it. And I also should note that EGLE did not support it. Thank you. But it did not say, the prohibition zone, I don't think said that the eastern plume was going to be cleaned up by just letting it discharge, that there were other provisions involved. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
So a number of hands were up previously, but they've all gone away now. So, oh, go ahead, Michael. You're mute.
That's, yeah, the question Rita raises is why I was asking whether the Attorney General had weighed in on this issue. Because there were other issues involved in that eastern area remediation that got removed, or at least were not included in the proposed fourth consent judgment, but they were just not discussed. It wasn't like it was accepted, so far as I would believe, at any rate. It was accepted that the river would be the sole quote unquote treatment for remediating this plume that's moving eastward.
So the next item on the agenda is the summary report on TW24, an update, and it designates Josh as a source.
Like I said, Josh is not here today.
So we're gonna,
as far as that was left over, I think I really updated last time. A summary report. TW24 is one of the is a extraction well that has been drilled on site as required under the response activity order. It's one of 3 on property extraction wells. It's the first of 3 that were done. And what I believe the question was is we had received, that well was installed in 2017, or the boring was done. We received a boring log, and I passed it on to the CARD back of TW24 once they in last September here. And as far as a summer report, we are expecting a report once all the on-site activities identified in the response activity order are completed. So they still have those activities as far as they still have 2 other extraction wells to install. They may, they are in the process of getting those installed and put online. And then once that's done, and we will get basically an as-built report that will include more information related to those, what is the core extraction wells, core area extraction wells. And so I'm anticipating that will come once these other wells are installed. But this TW24, the question was, hey, it was installed a long time ago. Why don't we get more information? What was done out there? And that is, we had that same question, and that information is is covered in our information request letters and the violation notice letters, that the information related to on-site activities, we want to see all of it. So that's the latest. I'm anticipating once they get the other ones in, that we will get some more information as those are installed and put online in their core area extraction.
thank you. Seeing no hands raised, I'm going to move on to the next item. Beth wanted to make a statement about the NPDES into Honey Creek and First Sister Lake.
Thank you. And I don't know if Dan probably doesn't have an update, and I don't know if there's some names I don't recognize or if they're water resources people, but since I have the floor, I'll just go ahead. As you guys know, many of you, I live right across the street from the Gelman site, and it's currently the Sister Lakes Association. I'm on the board of that. I'm not speaking as a board member today. I'm just speaking as a resident. But as a resident that lives right near on First Sister Lake, I would like this permit to be expedited as quickly as possible. The residents of this neighborhood have been traumatized enough by Gelman. The residents of Ann Arbor were overwhelmingly against this NPDES permit. I don't want it. The Honey Creek one was what, 2.5, 3 years ago. It's been in limbo. I don't want us to wait this long. Eagle, I'm asking you, begging you, pleading with you, anyone with Eagle, including the assistant AG and Andrea Munoz Hernandez and Dan, and if you could get this to Josh and whoever, maybe Director Clark, if she ever watches these. There's no reason to sit on this. Either we need it denied, obviously, but if it's not denied, we need to know something. Our neighborhood is very active right now, and we are doing all kinds of great things within the neighborhood, not just with the lake, but a lot of our great things are working with the lake. Huron River Watershed Council, some representatives from Eagle have been working on the bioswale. A lot of volunteers have been helping to monitor the lakes. We love our lake, and I have a resident who's attending right now who's on the Wells and Lakeview Avenue who's attending this meeting. She's very concerned about this discharge. We keep hearing about it every month. This needs to be expedited. It needs to be ultimately rejected, but Judge Connors actually said it was a poison pill and that it would be taken out. Gelman should not have a problem with this taken out because it just means they don't have to pump and treat. So this is a non-contentious item that 100% of the population was against, that spoke at all the meetings. And we are resilient over here, but we're kind of being pushed towards our limits. I don't feel that we should have to think about this all the time when we're ice skating on the lake. Is it going to freeze next year if the discharge is approved? So I'm just pleading to Eagle to please help us. I have my council members attending this too. Maybe she can help, and I don't know what the next step is. Thank you for listening.
I need to make some clarifications, Beth, of what you're asking. There are two NPDES associated NPDES permit issues with with Gelman right now. There is currently an existing NPDES permit for their discharge to the unnamed tributary of Honey
I'm not
Creek.
talking about that.
Right,
I'm
I know.
talking about the new
Let
one.
me clarify. So I want to make sure people understand that that permit is Gelman requested that permit be renewed, and that request was several years ago. And so as allowed under the law, as long as the request was valid, then they can keep discharging under the old permit. And that's for their treatment system on the off of their facility there. So that's ongoing. I do not have an update. I checked with Water Resources. It's still being in review. So I will, we're working because of the time frame. We want to get that issue resolved too. The other issue is there is a identified in a response activity order, a NPDES permit to discharge to First Sister Lake. That's the one you're talking about. I will, as far as just to let you know that Gelman, it's in the response activity order. The judge did not take that out. It is in that order. Gelman has not submitted that request to Eagle, for that NPDES
they
permit.
did 2 months ago.
Well, I'm just saying they have not submitted that to Eagle. So Eagle, to Eagle w.r.t. So there has not been a start of an evaluation of that.
Well, maybe someone can expedite this, is what I'm saying, for the public.
Well, I will pass that on to Gelman. That's their call to submit
That's their call. Isn't it part of the work plan that they have to do this?
Well, it's in the response activity order that they do that, but there is not a required calendar, a schedule item of that. What it states in there is in relationship to the extraction well, the Park Lake extraction well area, that the first step is to submit a response activity, a NPDES permit application to discharge to First Sister Lake to Eagle.
Right.
And if that permit is denied, then they do not have to install the extraction well. So
we would just like this to happen soon, because
in both of those circumstances, there is not a required date of to start this. There is not a specific within 90 days.
Years from now still be hanging on, and we should go ahead with our plans to improve the dock area that could be underwater.
I understand. I just want to make that clear right now. I will pass that information on to both internal on Eagle, and I will tell Gelman that we will see where that stands and say that.
Well, that will just do the opposite. They'll love that it upsets us, and they'll keep hanging on.
I will ask that question
for the state to help the residents.
So if I may, Beth, I understand your concern. But what Dan's saying is that they haven't even applied for this. So
But you told me 2 months ago they did. Every update you were telling me it did.
No, I did not say they applied for it. I said the first step for them would be to apply to implement the response activity order for the Park Lake extraction well, and they have not submitted that to Eagle. So we have nothing to deny, to respond to. That that is their call to submit that NPDES application to us.
Okay, so I thought typically that for the quarterly meetings like this, that the Water Resources Division had a representative in our meetings. Do you know if they intend to continue to participate, or what's the deal?
Well, I have invited participation. I guess I didn't invite them for this one. I checked with them, and the permit writer identified that it's still in review. Both the permit writer, Jessica Stiles, and Tarek, and her supervisor, Tarek, they have come to meetings a year ago or longer than that. So I will invite them to come to a meeting. And it's not, they don't typically come. Hasn't been, they have come to several historically, but that was pre-COVID.
Okay.
And so I'll check on that and try to get have them come and discuss your concerns.
Thank you so much. I want to point out that we're running a little long, but go ahead, Rita.
I would just ask Dan, can we actually, and Roger and Beth, can we actually put this on the agenda that we will invite this person and put that person on the agenda from Eagle to discuss this permit? You know, let's
it's not even there. And I know I've been told it was there for a few months in a row, but
I know, but
that's, I listen. So I don't think Water Resources can do anything till they see the permit in front of them.
Okay.
All right. With that, I'm going to move on to D. Is there anything new that you'd like to report, Dan?
No, I mean, other than, I've already stated that the drinking water laboratory, one of the big issues that I want to point out, drinking water lab will be offering the 0.5 part per billion detection level on any future sampling. So that's going to be starting, I was told this week or next week, they'll do that. So our sampling with the county will have that detection level. And I want to make sure people understand, anybody that submits their own water sample to the lab, individually, that will, the 1,4-dioxane analysis will have a 0.5 part per billion detection level. So they will provide that to everybody. And then the other issue is that I wanted to make sure people understood that with this new Scioto Township sampling that has gone on, we have been given the data, and we will make sure that data is put into our 2021 update of our RockWorks model and the interactive GIS web map for the Gelman site. So I will make sure that's data that we're getting from Scioto gets into there. We are in this process we have started in the process of updating from putting all the 2021 information and updating that, here. I don't have a date when that would be updated, but we are working on that. Those are the only two things extra I had.
All right. So I'm going to call on Rob at this point.
Dan Hamel, is there a number associated with this 0.5 per billion parts per billion test, similar to the method 522 or the previous methods the state has used? What is it, 18,270 for the number for the testing method?
You mean what is the EPA analysis method?
Yes.
The method that our drinking water lab uses, EPA method 8260 SIM, SIM, and it stands for single ion monitoring. So there's a EPA method 8260. You can look it up, But when they add single ion monitoring, it allows for a greater detection, lower detection for a particular ion. The one, so they are utilizing 8260 SIM is the method that our Eagle lab does.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Just for information, the method that Gelman uses at their lab is it's EPA method 1624C. It's a similar method and it does analyze for dioxane, but their detection level is 1 part per billion. That their lab gets 1 part per billion.
Thank you.
And that is in the response activity order. That method is required of them, from the order.
Go ahead, Ralph.
I just had a brief historical comment on item 4C that Beth was talking about, and that's this: that when the original 4th CJ was proposed, there was a lot of information and what I'd call some disinformation spread by various public officials about how great that consent judgment was, and that seems to be occurring even now. The point that Dan just made a minute ago is, well, we can't do anything, and it's Gelman's call as to whether they ever apply for that permit. The original way that the CJ was presented was that it was going to have this wonderful extraction well there, which would make extraction in the core areas so much better. And now it turns out that your position is they don't have to ever apply for the permit. This is directly in contradiction to what was said way back then. And I just want to point that out. That's completely diametrically opposite of what was said at the time. That
I want to clarify
happen.
what I was meaning, Ralph. What I was meaning is there is nothing, they are required to submit that as far as a response activity order, but there is nothing in that order that identifies or requires a time frame for them to submit that MPD.
Which effectively means they never have to. I mean, come on, let's cut the bureaucratic.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but that's what is currently how it's currently
okay written. I guess we'll have to address that to maybe your lawyer or maybe our lawyers.
So
that's all I have.
I will repeat that the CJ was the work of lawyers, not of necessarily.
I'm not putting it on Dan, but I just want to point out that if there isn't a date in the order, they don't ever have to do it.
Yep. So I'm going to now turn it over to the chair for his update.
Well, I'm going to try to do in 10 minutes what would normally take 40 minutes. And I'm using a new interface here. I've actually put this as a Google, what do they call this? Google Sheets? Not Sheets, Google Display. So this is like a PowerPoint. So I have all these different points and I have links in. So what I'm going to do is share this with CARD-Core after I'm done, so you can go in and look at the details, but I'm just going to go through the highlights. One of the things that I found is something about a review of EGLE's well logic system. And this was done by the unit was reviewed the well logic database, and why they did that and what they found out is that Michigan's well logic database, the only well database that Michigan has, and it has 30 to 80% errors. Now I will point out that I hope that's not the case for Washtenaw County. I think Washtenaw County is better than 30 to 80%, although there's probably 30% that's missing data. So when we have SIO relying on well logic to find the depth and other well log information about its sampling. And when Eagle's Rockworks is relying on well logic data, people need to keep in mind that the basis for all the wells in Michigan are 30 to 80% errors. And that goes to the fact that, maybe Michigan's not doing as good a job as it should. So that's all I'm going to say on that. I'm not going to pause for questions on each of these because we'll be well over time. Regarding SIOS 522 sampling method, we have a map, a series of maps of those, and this also is linked in a PowerPoint-like presentation, but I will point out that these are the locations that were sampled or are going to be sampled. The green are going to be in the spring, and the yellow dots are where there's been hits already. And here overlaid on that are all of the homes in Scioto Township that have wells. This excludes the vacant properties which could be developed and have wells. For instance, like the KFC site here. So that's all I'm going to say on that. And again, this is all linked to in this PowerPoint. The summary of Rockworks versus Eagle database that I've been comparing and trying to use the latest of the missing well log and XY data, but not all. There's still some information that's missing from both the Rockworks and the Eagle official database. I want to just say something about how the secret sampling at the Marshy area and how that was, nobody can reveal anything about what those samples were because it's covered under the confidentiality agreement. And yet, I got to go back a minute to the SIO thing. Dan, this is a format for inputting SIO's data, which I passed along to the officials at Scioto Township and filled it out for them. So this is the same input format that Gelman uses for their input to the like the date of the sample, which we didn't have details enough to fill in. But this should make it very easy for you to import the SIO sampling into the Gelman database. Now I'm going to jump back to the Marshy area. This is this area that Gelman had to buy, this parcel here, because their dioxin ran off into the Marshy area and contaminated it. Using the export from Rockworks, in particular the Gelman site of contamination, all borehole locations, I was able to download the KML files, the Google Earth map format, and this is what it looks like when you plot it on Google Earth. So here we have the locations for these 20 or 30 some, 28 or 30 different boring locations of the soils of the Marshy area. That was part of the sampling, the secret sampling. We know the locations. We know that they were done in around April because we have from Google Earth. You remember when I showed this image here and mentioned that, oh, those are truck mats and they were going on to do sampling. Well, this is within a month after the confidentiality agreement was signed. So these are the boring locations that were done in April after the March confidentiality agreement was signed. So we have some of the data. Now, is somebody going to sue Eagle for releasing this data? The problem is, of course, we don't know any details about how deep these are and what the dioxin concentrations were. So I just want to point that out, that in spite of a confidentiality agreement, we have some of the data, but we still lack the well log and sampling results. And there's much other things to do here for Rockworks. Another item. There's been a couple of reports that came out recently, Larry Lemke and evaluation, and the missing dioxane study. And that again is, let's see, where is it on here? This one here. Yeah, so I have a link to an email exchange I had with Larry about this. The bottom line is, as others have pointed out earlier, we don't have enough data to know how much of that decrease in dioxane levels is through attenuation and how much is just because we haven't had enough sampling to know where the dioxane is escaping past the monitoring locations. So that's enough said about that. And then another item I had was another abstract that came from the U of M School of Public Health. It talked about dioxane as vapor intrusion. So this is a recent study. It's unfortunate that they didn't come to a meeting and get some more updated. Here's the link to that. And the highlights were that vapor intrusion of dioxane from contaminated groundwater is a concern, yada, yada, yada. I'll let you read through the details of this. Now, the study itself is not published yet. Unlike the Lemke study, which for another, for 48 days, it was available for people to look at and download. I don't have a link to that because that would violate the agreements, but you can go to that link yourself. For this one, there is no such link like that. So we have to wait for the publication to come out later this year. Let's see what else is next. The next one is the Ms4 violation. Basically, we already covered that in this quote here, that there's consensus among the lawyers that, yeah, Part 201 trumps Part 31. And of course, we've already discussed that. There's a work plan for that, and now I guess we're going to finally get a look at that work plan. I'd like to hope that from now on, any work plan will be made public as soon as EGLE gets it, like they used to do when it was the DEQ, so that we can weigh in on it and help those people at EGLE know some of the facts when they're reviewing it, instead of having to do it after the fact when it's too late. But basically, as Rita pointed out, having that Part 31 trump the MS4 basically gives Gelman a pipeline to the river at 280 parts per billion. 280 parts per billion. It's just use that, just let it go. Instead of having to build a pipeline, we already have a pipeline. It's the drain. Let's just let it go. And I think that's unacceptable. Finally, I have started updating some of the Tableau public visualizations of all the Gelman data. I have to go back and pull the data over from the rockwork layers. But again, as you recall, this is what you can get, is something like this. This is a west to east view of all the data. These triangles at the top are the surface elevation, and the circles and the dots, they're really all just circles. Sometimes you can't see the fact that there's a little donut there. Are the screened elevations west to east. Gotta wait for it to refresh here. And this can be played over the years. So I have a video of this, of each of these views, west to east, south to north for the Gelman site. And what you can do is see the contamination spread over the years. And so everything started here and it spread down through all these different layers and got out to this location. Now, what's interesting is that we have some really high concentrations far away from the core site, and we don't know how it got there. There's gap. I will point out here, this is where the dioxane is as of 2020. Still got to update it with the 2021 data. Now, this is the same view of where it isn't as of 2020. So all these dots are where there was non-detect. Now, one of the things that may jump out at you is, well, wait a minute, that looks like some of the same elevations and some of the same extent of the dioxane. And you're absolutely right. Because dioxin doesn't spread equally. It tends to go in channels. And if you find the channels, you're in good shape. If you find a channel, you should find out, you should do contact tracing and say, where did that dioxin come from? And you should continue the contact tracing to find out where is that dioxin going. So you won't find, if you put these two together, you'll find that they're sometimes non-detect, very close to detects 60 feet. So that's our summary, and I think I've used up my time. But again, I will share this with the CARD core group. So anybody wants to go and look at more details, we'll have links to all of these things I covered. And you can delve, you can dig as deep as you want, and you can contact me if you have any questions. So I'm done. It's a minute 2, and I'm going to stop sharing. Any questions before I go?
So thank you, Roger.
How did you do on time?
Actually, you did excellent. You know, we actually give you, I think, 20 minutes. You took 10, and the agenda says we're going to have 10 minutes for non-agenda items. I don't think that we're going to do that. The agenda includes the reminder that the next meeting is Tuesday, April 5th at 6 p.m. Not in my capacity as executive director of CARD, but just as a friend. I want to note that Sue Shink has been a good friend of CARD and helped us immensely in our efforts to address Gelman. And this afternoon at 5:30, she's having a kickoff event for her next campaign at the Dexter Monument Park. And so I encourage friends of Sue to come on out. I guess we're starting to gather in public again, as scary as that is. And so before I conclude the meeting, is there any comment from anybody else here today? And I want to thank everybody who attended and participated. I think this was a good, productive meeting. That's it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll stay on for a few minutes in case somebody wants to chat with me directly.
Yeah. No, that would be great. Some people ask for that map of SIO, Roger. So if you could send me that or send it to all of CARD core, that would be great.
It'd be okay if you
It's in the link. I just didn't have time to show it.
It'd be okay if you stop recording. Yeah.
And I was going to introduce, we had a journalist join us from Eastern. I was going to introduce him. We will next month.
Who is that?
Let me see, what's his name? Dominic Michaela.
You must be on now.
A journalism, yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.